My name's Tasha Stones and I am profoundly deaf. I've been waiting for a hearing dog. So I'm profoundly deaf in both ears. I was born, they think, hearing, but I lost all of my hearing by the age of about 6 or 7 months. And I received my first cochlear implant at the age of 2. I did okay until I went to secondary school. At secondary school, life becomes a lot more conversation focused, and it got harder from that point onwards. I found it quite isolating. I got very, very anxious and I was very depressed as a teenager. I wasn't me. I kind of retreated into a shell. And there was a point at which I wasn't very proud of my deafness because I just saw it as something that stopped me from having friends. That time was really hard. I would not want to relive those teenage years again. It was pretty lonely. It's a weird mixture of worlds. In the deaf community, I'm my best self, but when I'm solo or in a really noisy hearing environment, I find that quite difficult still. For the most part, people are lovely once they understand. It's the lack of understanding, it's the invisibility of the deafness, so it's sort of a vicious cycle. You have to tell them you're deaf, which if you don't have the confidence to do, is a really hard thing to do, but once you tell them, the situation changes. And I'm incredibly proud to be deaf. It's not something I'd ever change. But the second I'm not with my deaf friends or with people who can sign, if I'm just out and about on public transport, on my own, I get quite anxious because people can't see my implant, they can't see that I'm deaf, and they look at me like, well, you can't be deaf, you're too young. I think it made me a stronger person. I wasn't always assertive of my needs, and that was because I was so, well, not embarrassed, just self-conscious. But as time went on, I realised I wasn't going to get by pretending everything was okay. And I'll be honest, my depression got to a point where I just didn't want to be alive, and that was a low. That's a whole low. And I think that was a turning point where I was like, something has to change. And I wish I could have told myself that when I was younger, that things would be easier in the future once I had that confidence and self-assertiveness. But it was after I got involved in the deaf community and I made deaf friends and I developed that really strong deaf identity, and I felt more me. I felt like I knew who I was proud of my deafness, I was assertive, and I was also afraid of public opinion, people saying things about my deafness, making assumptions about me. Then when it went out on TV, there were silly assumptions that I was partially deaf or I didn't actually use BSL or all of these things. But the majority of people were like, this is great, this is really cool. Because that's the thing about deafness, it's not one size fits all. There's so many variants and degrees of deafness, and it looks so different from person to person. So it was really nice to see the response to that. For people who didn't understand, I just had to look at it as an education, trying to break that stereotype. But even just doing the show made me more confident. So I actually found out about hearing dogs when I was at university, and I was umming and ahhing about it. And I thought I was still in that stage where I didn't really have a strong deaf identity. And I was afraid about the coat bringing more attention to my deafness. I wasn't sure if that would be a good thing or a bad thing. So I put off my application. think it was probably about 3 years later. I was a lot more confident, happy in my deafness, but still struggling in those environments where everyone's hearing, there's a lot of noise. Having a hearing dog wouldn't have been the right time 5 years ago, just because of my confidence. I was still trying to make my deafness invisible and wasn't sure about where I was. But now I'm proud, I'm loud about my deafness, and I know I need the support, and I know where I struggle, and I know that dog is going to be life-changing. I just won't be alone. But the second I came in and I met Natalie and I met Tilly and Mason were the client support dogs that I met on my assessment day. And it was just like concrete that I knew this is the right choice. I cried when Natalie called me on Teams to tell me that Digby was my dog. I was actually at work and I was meant to be doing an all-day training session, and I have no idea what the training was about. It's gone. The call was first thing in the morning, and it's all I could think about all day, and it's all I can think about for the last 3 weeks is Digby. Yeah, there's not really words for it. I can't wait for him to be actively in my house and just part of my life, and getting to know him, get to know his quirks, his routine. Yeah, it blows my mind he's going to be in my life for quite some time. And yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around. It really is.
On that, should we cut the camera and meet him?